I never really was a Star Wars fan. I don't really know why, but it just never struck my fancy. Maybe I would watch a part of a movie here and there, and when episode 3 came out when I was in high school, I have to admit I fell asleep during the midnight premiere with my friends. I don't really know how you can sleep through a movie like that, but I did it. However, when The Force Awakens came out last year, I thought, I guess I'll give it a shot. Between Rey and Poe and Finn, and of course BB-8, the small robot who rolled around providing comic relief, I was transported into a fantasy world and finally understood why this was a beloved universe. For someone who had never been introduced to the characters of Star Wars, my first introduction to Leia was not as Princess Leia, but as General Leia. In the wake of Carrie Fisher's death, feminist blogger Anne Thoreau posted on Twitter this week when talking about General Leia Organa. She's not young, she's not wearing a gold bikini or a robe. She's dressed to do what she's been training her whole life to do, lead the rebellion. This is the Leia that has lost everything. Her world, her parents, her son to the dark side, her brother to who knows where, her lover. This is the Leia that could have easily broken down or given up. But she was stronger than literally every man in her life. She kept going, because Leia is fighting for what is right and just, and that's more important than her feelings or her personal life. She's a fighter. She's the real hero of Star Wars. Princess Leia was great, but General Organa was Fisher's real gift to us. We have a tendency to always look to the past, remember the good old days, but how often does that mean that we are missing something beautiful right in front of us? Princess Leia was so important for people when they were introduced to her at 19 years old. But if we only lived in the past, watching reruns of the original Star Wars trilogy, we wouldn't have gotten to see the evolution of our beloved Leia. If Leia had held on to the season that came before, instead of the season of the now, we would never have gotten to see the strength and the dedication of this powerful woman who grew up to be the general. For everything, there is a season, and a time for every matter under heaven. A time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, and a time to pluck up what is planted. A time to kill, and a time to heal. A time to break down, and a time to build up. A time to weep, and a time to laugh. A time to mourn, and a time to dance. A time to throw away stones, and a time to gather stones together. A time to embrace, and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to seek, and a time to lose. A time to keep, and a time to throw away. A time to tear, and a time to sow. A time to keep silence, and a time to speak. A time to love, and a time to hate. A time for war, and a time for peace. Some of these certainly seem easier than others, right? Who wants to embrace the season to kill, or the season to weep, or the season for war? It certainly would be easier if we got to spend all our time laughing and dancing and loving. But if 2016 has taught us anything, we don't always get to be in the season that we want. 2016 has been a year of challenge, a year of division, a year of death, a year of hatred of the other. And while many folks are happy to put 2016 behind us, we have to also remember that it wasn't only a season of destruction. There was also some hope. Let's not forget that 2016 has been a year of birth. 2 new babies in our congregation, new grandbabies for many of our members, weddings, baptisms, building plans, marches for justice, a search for understanding. And while many of us look back on 2016 differently, some as a season of planting, and some as a season of weeping, some as a season of speaking, no matter what the season was like for you in 2016, the good news is there's always another season to come, and God will be present always. This week, my godson Ronan, who many of you have prayed for, met someone very important to him. When Ronan was 2 years old, he was diagnosed with dyskeratosis congenita, a rare genetic disorder that had caused him to go into severe bone marrow failure. We knew Ronan would quickly die without a transplant, and the situation seemed pretty hopeless. But finally, a donor was secured. Sometimes I think of that season I spent with Ronan, in the hospital with a mask on, watching his hair fall out from the chemo, watching his parents deal with the very real fact that they might lose their child, and looking at his newborn baby brother and wondering what it would be like for Callum to grow up not knowing his big brother. But today, in a new season, Ronan is in Venen, Germany, spending time with a man named Michael, who saved his life 6 years ago. I should also add that the prayer shawl from IUCC that he never sleeps without went with him. Ronan learned enough German to say, "Thank you, danke," and "I am Ronan, ich bin Ronan." And they have been spending time getting to know one another. In the midst of that season 6 years ago, none of us ever thought we would see this day. We never thought bone marrow donor Michael would give Ronan a small silver necklace with an angel on it. We never thought that there would ever be a season of hope again. But that's the thing about seasons. Change is a constant, and we never know what's next in the cycle. I don't say this to illustrate that everything will always come out okay in the end, because I know it doesn't always. Sometimes children do die, and sometimes seasons are all-consuming and we don't know how we'll get through them. But the promise we have is that there's always a new season that will arrive. That holding on to God and each other in the times of trouble gets us through those challenges and helps us celebrate in the seasons of joy. What season do you find yourself in today? What season are you moving into, out of? Are you in the seeking or the losing season, the planting or the reaping season? A couple weeks ago, I went to hear Sweet Honey in the Rock. Many of you may be familiar with this all-black, all-female a cappella group that's been around since the 1970s. Sweet Honey in the Rock, in a lot of ways, was the music of my childhood. Not only their music for kids, but their other work shaped who I am as a person. Their message of peace and harmony and loving who you are guided me through time of self-doubt and uncertainty. Of course, the concert was unbelievable and truly a lifelong dream come true. But one thing in particular stuck out to me. While talking about her heritage, Aisha Cahill told us that there is a rich tradition in her family of people praying for generations to come. So growing up, she knew that her ancestors had prayed for her and that she, in turn, would pray for her great-great-great-grandchildren. A time to plant and a time to pluck up what has been planted. This made me realize that we can't spend all our time plucking what has been planted if nobody ever planted the seeds. We have to pray for those to come. We have to get our world ready for our grandchildren. We have to spend time planting now so they can harvest later. And so looking back on this year may be painful for some of us. But let us resolve to go into the next season with God in our souls, love in our hearts, justice in our minds, and movement in our feet. A week and a half ago, we had the winter solstice, so the shortest days of the year are behind us, and we'll move into longer days, spring blooms, flip-flops, and shorts. But we'll also be leaving behind our warm, cozy fires, our sweatshirts, and our rainy days. The season of 2016 is ending, and for many of us, the promise of 2017 is one of hope and belief in better days. Whatever the next season holds for you, I wish you deep peace and serenity through it all. And if this becomes a season of trouble, just remember, there's always another on the horizon. Amen, and blessed be.